Hi, welcome to part 4 of Feather Your Nest. In lesson 3, we learned some new feathers. We learned how to put them into borders. We learned all about fences. This time we're going to learn some more elements to make a custom quilt. I'm trying to not only teach different styles of feathers, but I'm also trying to give you ways of using those feathers on your quilts. So we've already gone over a couple of simplistic border fills in previous lessons. Now I'm going to show you another one that looks a lot more complicated, but now that you've learned the basic plume, you're going to see that it's not hard at all. Now we're going to start out pretending that we're doing a 3-inch border. So I'm going to go ahead and draw chalk marks on the 3-inch line using my ruler. Now, a lot of people have asked me what I use to mark with when I'm doing my videos. And this is a Clover Chaco Marker. I love this thing. It marks so cleanly. You can really see the marks, but yet they're fairly fine and they brush off, which is delightful. So now we have our 45-degree angle. We're going to lay it down on the bottom line. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of room on the edge because you need something to hold on to when you're quilting, and normally you'd have a large quilt to hold on to, but in this case not so much. So we're going to draw our first line. Now we're going to flip the ruler basically I've turned my ruler upside down. I've matched the mark up here. I've got my 45-degree line along the bottom line, and I'll draw another mark. So basically what I'm doing is making a series of triangles for my border. So line up here and line along the bottom and draw your line. Now that's as much as we're going to get in this width of fabric. So I'm just going to call that the end, and we'll call this the end. So now we have our piece marked out. The piece that I'm working with, in case you're wondering, is about 15 inches wide. So even if you're working with a little bit longer piece, you're probably only going to get the two full triangles plus the third one at the top, and we're going to take it from there. But first I'm going to stitch around these lines to make it look like the seam. Now we're ready to start. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch a hook that goes up to the chalk line. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to do bump back feathers, and that's my first plume. Now I'm going to backtrack the top of that a little bit. And come down to the line. So let me trim this thread out of here so it's not interfering with your view. Now I'm going to go back up again. Now as I'm doing this, I'm keeping an eye on the center of this block because I want one long plume to go there. So I'm going to try to adjust my plumes as I get closer to that target point. Now it looks like I can get one more in before I do the top one. So we'll go around here, come back down and do that one. And now we're going to go up and do the one in the middle. Let's work our way back down again. And as you can see, we're strictly doing nothing but plumes. We're doing it so that we've got a 45-degree angle going on. We're coming back down to a point when we get to our base line, like we do with a regular feather. Okay, so that's basically like a feather with an odd shape. So now let's work our way over here. Remember, keep your eye on that middle. It looks like I can get maybe one fatter one in there. And now we work our way back down again. Now you can do this with a regular feather as well. It does not have to be the bump back feather. These just happen to be my feather of choice. But if you want to do a regular feather like so, by all means do so. And we're just going to walk up here. Right up the ditch. Now at this point you could turn your work, but if we were talking about a quilt and this were on the outer border, that would be a pain in the neck to have to turn that whole quilt around to do the second side. So if you remember, we've learned how to do these stitches from left to right and right to left. So that's where this comes in handy. So since we've started in a half triangle here, that means we need to make half of a big plume. Because it would be cut in half. Now we'll come back down. Now this is just like we did with the rectangle in the last lesson, and that we have this fence going between the two rows of feathers. We're not going to go over the fence, but we are going to go up and say hi to our neighbors without touching them. Now we're going to come over here. to your neighbor and come back. Always bringing your plume back down to the line so we maintain that 45-degree angle, because it's going to require it to come to a point, and that's what forces it to go into that 45-degree angle. Now this is where we get into the big plume right here. And now we'll work the sides of the plumes back down again. Now let's go back over to this side. And remember, this is a half of a triangle, so we're going to do a half of a feather. And there you have another style of border that you can do with your plumes and your feathers, but it looks like you've really arrived as far as your quilting goes. Looks pretty fancy, doesn't it? Have you ever wondered what to put in a square area on your quilt? Like in a 9 patch or the corners of stars, things like that? You're at a loss. And it seems like we all fall back on the orange peel, which is just simply doing an arc all the way around. And that's okay, but sometimes you want something just a little different. So let's bring out our feathers. So basically what I have here are 2 squares. We're going to do something different in each one. They're 3-inch squares, and I have diagonal marks down through the center. Those are our fences. So we're going to start just like we did for the border in the corner, and we're going to work our way up to those lines. Let me get this thread cut out of the way. Okay, have you ever had that happen, or you thought it was stitching but it wasn't? Well, in this case, we can just go back in and fill in what we thought we had before. And go from there. So basically what we're going to do is just like we did before, only we're not aiming to really hit that line. We want to just get maybe 1/8 of an inch away from the line. We still have to concentrate on gauging the plumes so that we can get that big one in the center. We still want to come down to the outer line, bring those plumes into a point. Now when we get around to this side, we're going to keep going. We're going to do the plume. And try not to cheat by turning your fabric. See if you can do these upside down. Save that big one for the middle. Now let's work back down in the sides of the plumes. Again, go back to your baseline point. Okay, these ones are going to be standing on their heads. Ready? Here's our first plume. Make sure you don't touch your neighbors. Just say hello. Big plume in the center. And now we get to do it without standing on our heads. Now granted, if we were doing the orange peels, we would have had a lot of them done by now. But it sure wouldn't look as fancy as what we're doing here. Sometimes you just want to put a little bit more effort into something, and this would be one of those times. Forgot where I was there for a minute. So there is another way to do your square. Now, as I said, I have two of them here. So I'm going to show you another way. On this one, we're going to start in the middle of the X. And we're going to do a big plume. Straight up and down. Now we're going to do one beside it. We're going to touch it, bump back, and come down. Touch it, bump back, and come down. Now we're staying on this side of that drawn X. So now we're going to stitch along the ditch till we get to the middle of the next one. And again, you can turn it if you want to, but practice on trying to do these stitches without turning your work. So we're going to do our plume in the middle. And we're going to fill in this side. Say hi to your neighbor, but don't touch them. And then ditch walk over to the other side. Okay, now we're going to do some more walking in the ditch, and we're going to do room in the middle. Fill in, coming up to the fence. Don't touch your neighbor. Walk over to the other side. Get the middle one, bump back, and down, touch, bounce back, and down. And now we're going to come over here, walk around the corner till we get to the middle. And we're going to do another big quilting. Say hi to your neighbors. Around to the other side. Touch. Bounce back. Down to a point. Touch, bounce back, and down to a point. Now we're going to come around the corner again, and we're going to finish this part. And there's another way to fill in your square. This one takes a bit more of backtracking along the ditch line. So it would be best to be done in a finer thread. This one doesn't require as much backtracking, but they both look very nice. We've done borders, we've done squares. How about if we do a wreath? Now, to mark your wreath, you can go out and purchase all kinds of things to give you perfect circles. This is the Ultimate Stencil by Cindy Needham. But if you don't have this on hand or can't afford to purchase that, never fear. Just look around your house, and what you want is a couple things that are round. So here's a coaster, and here's a lid from my pots and pans, and I particularly like to use that because it's clear see-through, and I can center that directly over the coaster and know that I've got it in the middle. So let's move this over here where we have a little bit more room, and let's draw the circle around the coaster first. Now, the one thing about these types of markers is they don't do as well on curves because of the wheel inside. They're really meant to mark straight lines, but it worked. Now, the message you're seeing is not from the chalk marker. It's actually, that coaster was a soapstone coaster, and that's the residue from that. Now we can take our lid and we can put it over top of that and make sure that it's centered. And I'm going to use a different marker for this. This is the Fons & Porter ceramic chalk marker, and it does much better around curves, as you can see. It doesn't make as dark a line, but nonetheless it'll make a line that we can see. So there's our curve, or our circle. Now, you're going to have more feathers on the inside of this circle than you are on the outside of this circle, because they have to cram into a tighter area. So for that reason, we're just going to go down the center of that circle and let's draw a fence. That's not really the center, is it? Let's move that over a little bit. That's better. Now I could go through all the ordeal of measuring this out, and if I did this right now, I can see that that line is 2 1/4 inches from the edge of the circle. So I'm going to come over here and put my 2 1/4 inch line there. Keep these lines lined up on my ruler and draw another marker. So that gets me pretty much centered in that circle. Now I can move my kitchen utensils out of the way and we're ready to start. Sorry for all the mess. Try to get rid of some of this so it's not distracting. I almost forgot the middle circle. Find one more round object and use that X in the middle to align it to the center. Now we're ready to start. So we're going to have a series of 3 circles. They don't have to be uniform in size. Whatever you have laying around, just draw an inner circle, a medium circle, and an outer circle. And what we're going to do is we're going to start out by stitching the inner feathers first. And this is going to be the baseline right here. So if it makes it easier for you to stitch that line, you can do it. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that so you'll be able to see it better. This is going to be the line that you always come back to. Trim this thread off. And I'm going to turn this only so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to stitch along the inner circle, or the middle circle. Because that's our baseline. Okay, now we're ready to roll. Okay, we're going to go from the baseline that we just stitched and touch that inner circle without going over it. We're going to start out by doing a hook. Go up to the fence line, stitch back, always bringing your plume back to the center so that you're going to go back out at an angle. Come up, touch the inner line, back, okay, so we have a quarter of it filled in. Now we're going to keep on going. As soon as we put some more bobbin thread in. Okay, we've changed the bobbin, we're ready to go again. So let's continue on. We're going to go up and touch the ring and come back down to our baseline. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed this or not, but do you see how these feathered plumes are kind of laying down a little bit? That's how we get them all in there. They get a little lazy. So although we are going, when we come back down to our baseline, let me show you this, we are coming down at that angle. Do you see how we can stop on the baseline much sooner rather than going all the way down to the point? Because the baseline is continuing on with the angle for us. And that's because they're semi-laying down. They're like in a recliner chair right now. So we're going to keep going. Now, as we're doing this last section, you've got to keep your eye here because we need to judge how many more feathers can we get in this area. And I'm saying we can do 2 more feathers. So we're going to come up with the first feather hitting about midway in between there. And the last feather connects with where we started. Now you can see why we started with a hook, because it makes it easier to connect. Now we're ready to do the outer ring. In order to make this pleasing to the eye, we want this going in the same orientation as these feathers are going, and they're going up this way. So these therefore have to go this way. So if we turn this just a little bit, it'll make it easier for you. And we'll start out by doing a hook again. Come up the outer line. Now, as you're watching me do this, do you see any difference between this and the inner feathers, other than the fact that they're a little bit longer? Notice how they're standing more upright than the inner feathers did. They're not laying down nearly as much because we have to do more of them than we did on the inside in order to get them to fill the entire area. So again, we're doing nothing different than what you've done so far. We're doing nothing different. The only thing that we're doing different is we're putting them in a circle instead of on a straight or a wavy line. We're still making the plumes just like we did before. So, yeah, you can buy a stencil to do this with, but what if you have a 6-inch stencil, but you have a 9-inch area to fill in? Do you want to go out and have to buy another stencil? Or do you want to learn how to do this yourself to fit any area? My money is on learning how to fill any area. And save that money for fabric. Also keep in mind, just like when we did the mystical feather, when we added all kinds of elements to it, you can do the same thing with a feathered wreath. They don't all have to be just the perfect little plume. I'm just showing you this way just to get you started. But I'm sure as you work on this and feel more comfortable, you can start spreading your wings. Now we're getting close to where we started. So I'm thinking 1, 2, 3 feathers ought to do it. So let's space those. The second one, and there's the third one that meets up with our first feather, and we're just going to walk on down here to our baseline. And there you go. You have your perfect little feather. We can take away all the lines. It'll just be our little secret that you started with a gum canister, a coaster, and a lid from your pots and pans. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. I'm so excited with what you can learn to do about feathers that I've gone really over the time limit on this lesson. Join me for part 5, where we'll continue on with feathers in a circle, etc.